ladies and gentlemen, today I have a very interesting guest. His name is David Zeff. What makes this episode interesting and different today is David doesn't run one sales pipeline. He runs hundreds across 300 plus clients. He sees what works and what fails across every industry, every quarter. That cross-company pattern recognition is something no single VP of sales can match. So David, you went from reporting on M&A deals to owning a gym franchise to running a 100-person SDR agency that generates $15 million a month in qualified pipeline for over 300 clients. You wrote that startups should stop building rocket ships and start building castles. Today we're getting inside how we built the machine, how you built the machine, and why it's betting on humans, and why you're betting on humans when the rest of the market is betting on AI.
Unbelievable. What an intro. Thanks, Shane. It's a pleasure to be here, man. Let's get right into it. Ready to roll.
So David, tell us who you are, what do you do, and why do you do it, and why should anybody stay on this episode for the next hour to hear what you have to say?
All right, everybody. So my name, I am a CEO at Whistle. We support, as Shane shared, about 350 companies across the world in every time zone. Most of our clients are B2B tech. We're about 140 people. We're in 7 different countries. And the funniest part about all of this is I built it by mistake. So the plan was not to build a services company. The plan was to build a SaaS company. I come from tech. I've been part of 3 exits. 1 as a founder in Australia with a friend of mine. And then 2 as like a first sales hire that built and scaled the sales team. And I was actually pulled in by a VC that asked me to help their portfolio, and the rest is history. So I think what would make this an episode worth listening to, I'm not talking to you from like theories. I'm not a consultant. I'm somebody who's on the ground every day. I think I have a very unique perspective because, as you said, Shane, we're currently seeing a full spread across multiple industries, multiple time zones, as far as what's working, what's not working. And so I think if you're tuning in for the next hour, or if you're listening to this recording, hopefully you'll come back with some learnings and things that you can directly take into your business, whether you are a business owner or an operator in the sales development go-to-market space, that will hopefully add some revenue for you or your clients.
So let's take it a little bit back. I hear a little bit of an Australian twang, a South African twang, but you are Australian. You studied at Macquarie. You built your early career in fitness and finance in Sydney. So you're like the Western Hemisphere Alex Hormozy. Now you're running a global sales agency from Tel Aviv. What made you make that move?
So I think, like everyone else who's sort of in this world of sales and marketing, you sort of fall into it, right? And yeah. I think for me, I knew a couple of things leaving school. One was I really didn't want to have a regular job, a corporate job. So I was very lucky. I got in right out of high school. I got a job working for the Financial Times. That was just like a crazy experience. I was the youngest person there. I was 19 at the time, or 19 at the time. And all my colleagues were like, ex-Routers, ex-BBC. And I got in because I can write. I really like to write. It's a passion of mine. And I think for me, a lot of my life, my professional life, has been about exploring that kind of creativity and finding different ways to harness it. Fitness is something that I've been very passionate about since about 16 or so. And I found while I was studying business at university, I found a way to fund my, life as a uni student without working 8 hours a day, which is personal training. So personal training led me down a rabbit hole because I combined my business knowledge with my fitness passion, built a fitness business, and then that led to SaaS because a friend of mine and I realized that all these trainers had no business sense. So they didn't know how to do things like payment collections and invoicing, and so we built an app that was built all around that, and that led me into the rabbit hole that is SaaS and software, and then I just got, then my mind just blew. So, what led me across all that, career-wise, I think has been this sort of quest to just sort of explore myself and see, where things go. And I've just been very passionate about tech now for just over a decade. What led me to Tel Aviv is I met my wife here, so that's the rest.
That's always nice.
3 kids later, that's the end of my world tour. Born in South Africa, raised and grew up in Australia, been in Israel now for 12 years, and yes, it's been a very interesting journey across a lot of different fields.
Wow. So let's walk back to the fitness training, the personal coaching. High school, college is a very, very just like adventurous time, and a lot of people are drinking. You obviously took care of your body and focused first on that. Walk me through the moment you were going through at that time where you were like, all right, these people can't do this. You see an opportunity, but what motivated you to actually take action? Was there anything compelling in your life? Was it worried about money? Was it you wanted something different? What was it that compelled you to say, I'm going to fucking take a chance on myself? What was that like? Walk me through that.
Yeah, whenever I sit with entrepreneurs, I also ask them this question, like, did you grow up wealthy or poor or lacking something? Or what sort of thing, or did you ever, were your parents entrepreneurs, or did you ever see your parents struggle? I think a lot of people have a very sort of similar experience if they're entrepreneurial. For me, we moved countries when I was 14. My dad's always been an entrepreneur. I watched him pick himself up and build himself up again and again. And the volatility that comes with that is something that I know very deeply. It's not a mental thing. I know it very personally. And if you're listening and you can relate to that, maybe you can relate to that. And so for me, I sort of I can tell you, like, from age 14 when I moved to Australia, I sort of made that promise to myself that I'm going to be successful and I'm going to do something. I think part of the reason why the world of fitness and training appealed to me so much is it's one of those things that you can do where you can actually see the effect of it. So it's something you can control. I remember that for my 16th birthday, my parents got me personal training sessions. And my trainer was like this bodybuilder, and he looked like Superman. And I remember realizing, like, oh my God, you can like make yourself look like Superman.
Yes, you can.
Crazy. Like, you could just follow this program and you could do it. And I think that kicks off anyone who's in that world of like training, whether it's for an event or just whatever, just for health. There's something so powerful about being able to plug into that feeling of, wait a second, I can, by putting in all this effort in a measured, controlled, planned way, it can lead to all these outcomes that can dramatically, propel me forward. And I think entrepreneurship's a lot like that. So I think my early day motivators is probably one, running away from that feeling of lacking, that fear of not having, and also running towards, I can take myself to the next level. Financially, for sure, that was the first motivation, right? And maybe coupled with that was like maybe, trying to get some sort of recognition from the world or whatever.
Yeah.
Today, it's different motivation, especially when you're a dad with kids, and it's a completely different mindset. Also, ironically, same with my training. Most of the training I'm doing today is, I would say, mostly for my mental state more than like trying to look good at the beach. But I think the first start for me was like, I want to make some money and I want to change the course of my life and my family's life, and I just don't want to be in a place where I don't have.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then was there a moment of a convincing moment where you knew that personal training, you figured it out, you're able to create something valuable, you moved on to the next role in your life or the next stage of your career, being in SaaS or building a SaaS company? What was that convincing moment when you knew this works, this is what I'm supposed to do?
I think it was a conversation I had with my brother's friend at the time, became my friend, and he was doing like an online e-commerce store for training equipment. And I'd had this idea because, again, I'd looked at my peers and I was studying all this stuff at business at university and I was applying it. So I'll give you an example. Our gym was in a mall and right next to us was like a Foot Locker. In Australia, it's called Rebel Sports. Actually, I think there's a Rebel Sport in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Rebel Sport, they had a huge store next door. So I went to the store manager and I said to him, can I put like a poster in the window? Can I put my cards on the front desk for my clients? Can I get a discount off the shoes and stuff for my clients, and the guy was like, great. Now, we didn't discuss the size of the poster, so the biggest poster stuck on the window of me, personal trainer. So everyone who came into fitness first saw that poster and were like, who's this guy? So, like the store man, they have it's a franchise, right? So the guy who owns the franchise came, ripped that thing a few weeks later. But I got some good ads out of it. And so but things like that I'd learned because I was at uni and I was like, this is marketing, this is sales. And I think that I started applying it in a passion when my friend and I combined to the software side of things. My initial feeling was this is so cool. You can just build cool stuff that works, that changes, people's lives. Maybe it keeps the trainers in the business and makes money. We were taking a clip of every payment, charging subscription fees. It was just cool. And I think moving to Israel 10x that because Israel, as far as the world of SaaS and software, second outside of Silicon Valley, in terms of capabilities, in terms of exits, founders, unicorns. And that was just mind blowing. That was just there's just a whole nother game here to play, and I just loved it. I loved working in sales. I loved the ability to earn commission, to be a mini entrepreneur. And yeah, it's just been it just hooked me for a long time. And so I guess the pivot for me was realizing also that when I was running the fitness business, it was a personal face-to-face business that you can only scale with hours. And I thought to myself, well, it's hard. If you've ever been a trainer, you're working the 5 to 9. You know what I mean? It's and then the 9 to 5, but the other way.
It sucks.
5 a.m. to 9, and then the 9 p.m. to 5. So, you're exhausted, man. You're tired. You're sore. And emotionally, also, all your clients are, bitching and moaning, and you have to be positive the whole time. So I realized, this is not going to scale, unless I'm just going to do this till I, can't move anymore. And that software just provided a whole new avenue for me to explore, and then I fell down the rabbit hole from there.
Mate, that is a very interesting story because there's obviously that transition period too where you get to this explosive growth and then you've come to a new market and you've seen, wow, there's a much wider opportunity, a much bluer ocean. But the point of which you knew was the fitness business the one was that your first exit?
The software company, yes. So I sold my equity in it when I moved from Australia to Israel. I wanted to run it here from Israel, but this is pre-Zoom. The capabilities just weren't there to allow you to run a business overseas. I was the bottleneck. I sold my equity. It's still running today. And that was the gateway drug into the world of software and SaaS and sales.
That's what I want people to hear. There's a moment, so I experienced my first moment of freedom in September of last year. I had just done a couple of years at a startup. First time I had ever had equity in a startup, and the payout of that was, it definitely set a very different perspective from the usual, which is I got to get back to work right away, versus I can take a break and actually evaluate my position. What was that exit moment, or that when you sold your equity in that company? Walk us through what that moment was like. What was the feeling like when you actually received capital? You had your first capital event from some of the hardest work, the first hardest hours of work you put in. What was that like, so people can realize what we're all kind of striving for, or should be striving for, which is that capital event? What was that like for you?
So for me, a life stage shift. I think the first real sort of wake up for me actually was the second exit, which was the EdTech one. Ironically, the first one, it basically, between that and the first one basically funded my life. As a new immigrant into Israel, to be able to get myself onto my feet again. But ironically, I had to start from the very bottom here. as far as the chain. I started as an SDR here in Israel, so going from the CEO of a tech company and having, whatever, wasn't a huge company at the time when I sold it, but still, to like back to like learning about cold calling and getting into this world again. And I ate humble pie and was very happy to do it. I remember saying to my wife, I'm going to take 7 years, I'm going to become an expert in sales in this world, and then I'm going to try again and build my own SaaS company. And that's literally what happened. So did this edtech company for 3-4 years. As I was number 8 there. We sold we were about 110 people in. We sold to private equity. They offered me relocation to the US. I didn't want to take it. I didn't want to go and just shift my whole life there. But that payout paid for our first apartment, and that changed my life completely. Because from there, once you own property, going from just a regular sort of person to now you own a property, and that just accelerates, and the games just change from there. And I think a lot of entrepreneurship and wealth creation, all these kinds of things, get a very bad rap.
Yep.
And I can understand it if you stole it,
Yeah.
But if you did the work, man, get the cash out, enjoy it. You deserve it, and we shouldn't be hating. I don't know why it is that most people, instead of just asking somebody, hey, you've done something that I would love to do. How did you do it? And you give me some pointers. Most people, instead of asking those questions, just jump to like, I hate that person, or whatever. You're not going to learn anything. Like, okay, you're not going to learn anything. You're not going to get their money. You're not going to learn anything. So yeah, for me, it's like it was a real game changer, and then the ultimate game changer in my life has been Whistle. Being creative.
Yeah.
Whistle is another level. We're a multi-million-dollar company, profitable from day one, and that's a different level of operating. I'm not talking to you from my yacht, so we're not there. But like, I think anyone who talks to you and says to you they're doing entrepreneurship for the fun times is
full of shit.
100%. We're all in it for the money. 100%. You've got to be in it for the money. Otherwise, what are you doing? Go work for a charity.
Yeah.
But it does help if you find a way to express yourself and to do things that add real measurable value to the world, and at the same time getting it back. So, yeah, man, I have no apologies for. I don't think anyone should apologize for their success.
Not at all.
If you earned it,
it's an amazing experience, and look, you see it very quickly as you kind of progress through your career. There's slowly your friends wither away, then your family withers away because it's like, hey, how was your day? My day was really good. I closed this huge deal. Oh, really? And then he's so obnoxious. He's so arrogant. He always talks about like just like shut the fuck. So it took you 9 roles to get this deep, and it just shows there is a graph. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. You're a financial reporter. You're a personal trainer. You're a franchise owner, a tech founder, an SDR, an AE, a VP, a head of sales, and a CEO. 9 titles in 15 years. Which of those roles shaped how you lead today more than ever?
Look, the CEO role requires a lot of different things for you at different times, and I think you don't realize it at the time when you're going through life. And when you're young, I think when you're young, you should be exploring as many different things that you can do as possible.
Yeah.
Because you never know where. For example, there's so much that I learned in personal training that is applicable to how I deal with people today. I didn't know at the time, like for example, in personal training, I didn't know I was in sales until I started doing software sales. And then I was like, oh, when I was going to people in the gym saying, what are you training today? And the guy's like, legs. And I go, can I show you a pretty cool legs exercise? And that guy then signed up as a client. Like, that's selling. That's consultative selling.
Yeah.
Right? But I didn't know that at the time. But it came naturally because I tried those different things. Or if I look at like, I've got whatever it is, 24,000 followers on LinkedIn. Why? Because I'm writing content all the time. Well, I learned how to write, in a previous job, decade and a half ago, whatever it is. it comes back later. So all of these things, you never know where it's going to go. I think out of all the roles, though, as far as being a leader, obviously being a CEO, it just pulls a lot out of you. At the beginning of a company, you are everything. You're the most important part in the company because you're everything. What you want to get to is to basically be the least important person in the company on a day-to-day, right? Where things can run without you. I like to think of it as like, the male lion in the pride. Most of the time you look at him, he's lying on his ass. Like he's chilling. He's not hunting the food. He's chilling. But then another male lion comes, or like a rhinoceros comes, or the hyenas come, and all the females look at him and they're like, "Hey,
go get the shit done.
This is what you've been eating steak for, brother. Let's go." So that's the difference, Like today, that's basically where I'm at. Like I always say to my team, like I now have two main roles. I summarize it as like building castles, which is like coming up with cool ideas and cool stuff and initiating stuff that only I could really get people to do, or fighting dragons, dealing with really sticky, horrible, scary problems that it's not anyone's responsibility to deal with other than me. And that's the side of entrepreneurship. I mean, people do talk a lot more about it today, but even the stuff it's actually the stuff people don't post on LinkedIn that, only other entrepreneurs know about, how difficult it is. And that's a huge character development thing. For us, when we went from 2-3 people at Whistle to 140 people at Whistle, it required me to change and grow a lot, and think of myself in a different way, think of how I lead in a lot of different ways, challenge me. I've made a million mistakes. I still make mistakes every day, and forgive myself for those mistakes, learn from them. So I just think it's one of those great character builders, being a CEO, and it's ironically not what you think it is when you look from the outside in. You look from the outside. It's very shiny on the outside. It's pretty tough on the inside.
It's very hard. It's very hard, and I've heard a lot of times you have to be like a chameleon. So the adaptation to change at any given moment where your business is growing, I've heard that to be a critical component of your success. So from the moment you were at zero, well, let's just say you, and what do you think was the first most important hire for you?
My brother. My brother is my COO. So they say, don't work with family and friends. I disagree. So my brother was, when I started, it started by consulting, to companies. You can give amazing advice with SDR, but someone has to pick up the phone, right? It's the heaviest object in sales. And I used to say to these founders, like, "Hey man, I've written you a great script and we've got this great strategy and I've built you a great list. Like, who's called these people?" And they would all like shrug their shoulders. So I suggested we build the team for them. And the first company that said yes, I grabbed like my brother who was an SDR like at the time, an SDR leader at the time. I was like, "Come, let's make some extra money on the side." I grabbed my sister, I grabbed people I'd worked with, and my brother-in-law. I had to fire all of them except for my brother. So I'm like, "You're terrible, you're out." That was client one, man. Client one, if you want to talk about down and dirty, that was client number one. But we delivered, and once we delivered, we were like, "Hey, let's see what else." Now, both him and I were willing to both put in the work and deal with the stress. Like the most stressed I've ever been in my career was when we had like 5 clients. Because 5 clients, statistically, you can get notice from like 40-50% of your clients in the same day of the week, and that's it, And in the business that we're in, it is high performance only effectively, because you're only as good as your last week or your last day. Specifically like sales development, where it's very clear to measure, am I delivering results or not? So the most important hire was him, and we as a team have grown through a lot of challenges. The second most important hire for me was bringing in a resource, an HR resource that could help us source talent, because that is our product. We needed high quality talent. And so having somebody on the ground, most of our team are out of Cape Town, having somebody on the ground in Cape Town that could build that team with us was probably the second most important hire. Effectively a product person, right? If you're putting it into SaaS mindset, but operations and product, I knew how to sell and how to market, and in the beginning, that's what we wrote off, like my relationships and network that I had built here for nearly a decade, and then we grew from there.
And then what do you think was the moment you had to change who you were to step into the role of your new environment? What I mean by that is, let's say from 1 to 5 and then to 10, you're able to hire a few resources, a customer success manager, maybe a few more reps, you might have an operational leader. But was there a moment where you were like, holy shit, I am like completely out of my, I'm completely out of my realm here? Was it at like 50, 100 reps? And what was it like? Like, what was the problem you came up against? And then you said, like, your tool house is non-existent. It doesn't work at that point. So what did you have to do to then be a chameleon and adapt to kind of the next phase of your growth? Walk me through that, because a lot of companies get to that point. I got to that point of $1 million and I couldn't go from 1 to 10. I just broke, right? So for you, what was that like for you, that transition beyond the next phase of you and your brother and kind of the first foundational model?
Yeah, I think I'll take you to the most recent moment and then I can go backwards. The most recent moment that happened for me was about 6 months ago. I realized for the first time that I had a leadership team that could handle everything. Like last year, I went on 2 holidays or even 3 holidays last year.
Wow.
Which I'd never done before. And when you go away, if you're the CEO, if the company's running fine without you,
yeah.
firstly, I mean, your mind is always racing, right? But like, I really, last year, like, I really tuned off. It was like my wife and my 10th year, so I wasn't going to be working during that period. And then, you know, took the kids, you know, we all went as a family, whatever. And I noticed, like, hey, this thing can run without me. So when you realize that, it's sort of a chance to say, well, do you grab the wheel again, or do you let the team run it? So I think the first big challenge for me actually was letting go towards the end of last year and understanding that, like, I need to give, if I trust the leadership team that I've built, and all of these people are already amazing and they've been with us for years, if I trust them, then I need to give them the tools that they need to succeed. Mm-hmm. That is still a lot, and that was a lot for me personally to deal with, because I am a control freak. I am a type A personality. I like to win. I like to control the situation. I trust myself. I have low natural trust in others.
Yeah, same here.
It took a lot, you know. It took a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think that was, and I've spent 6 months working on that, and just really trying to internally work with that and let go and give your team a little bit to work with and see and try to prove to yourself, okay, you know, you can let them run this thing. So that was the most recent. I think over the course of Whistle, the first major change was removing myself from being the customer success manager for all of our clients. That was, there was a point where we actually never believed that could happen. We were stuck on like 10 clients for ages. And we couldn't scale because I was the guy that closed them, and then it's like you change your t-shirt and it's like, all right, time to work. Time to onboard you. And I remember saying to Yona, my brother, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said to me, like, I don't know how we're ever going to have another person who knows what you know, because I would be like over the top in terms of like handling everything. And so when I created with him these sort of, okay, I have to take some of my best SDRs and I'm going to train them. And I'm going to train them on what I've been doing, and we're going to systemize. Freeing me completely from being a customer success manager was the first big milestone. And that meant at the time that I could focus on just bringing them in and maybe a little bit of working on the business. That was the first one, is like freeing me from handling the clients on a day-to-day. Even as simple as we used to do like, at one point, like weekly meetings with every client every week. And it was too much. It was like, even just that was like crazy. So moving that to like twice every 2 weeks, I thought they're not going to take this if I tell them I need to meet them every 2 weeks. And they were all like, okay, you know, cool, meet you every 2 weeks, no problem. All these little changes are like at the time they're so big. Looking back, they're so small, but they lead you down the path. I think the short is, if you want to level up and scale, you have to create systems for success. That's number one.
Yeah.
You have to bring in the right people, and you have to be so careful in terms of the team you bring in, the clients you bring in. These are 99% of the problems are going to come from those two things. If you can get really good clients and really good team, most of the other problems you're going to be able to handle. And if you create the systems, then you can start to scale up, give people direction, let go of the wheel, let them drive, and your business can grow and flourish as a result. But that is hard. If you're like, let's say me and you, who are type A, performance-oriented, ownership, accountability-oriented type of people, that is really hard to say, this is who I am, and I'm going to put all of that aside.
So was there a framework? So for me, I came to the moment in year 2, my biggest moment was, I've got money now, I've got clients, but everything is all over the place, right? There's no system in place. So the first system that I put in place was by Gino Wickman. It was a operating system called EOS. You may have heard of it, by Traction, right? And I adopted and used that in every single business, everything I did for the past 10 years, and it worked really, really well. But there was one point that we wanted to scale to the next phase, and I read a book called Systemology, and that ended up being a great book that helped me systematize my business. For you, when you got down to systematizing your business, a lot of people will say that, right? But the actual true definition of what do you mean by systematize? Not too much nuance and detail, but how did you systemize? Was there a specific framework? And what did it look like after the systemization was complete?
So this is where my brother and I balance each other out. I am sales, marketing, creative, people relations. That's sort of my strength. I am organized, but I'm not necessarily interested in systems and operations. My brother is the other way around.
Okay.
So he can do the other stuff. He can close deals if he needs to. He can build relationships if he needs to. But if you give him the option, he would rather be the operator, systems creator type of person. He brought in EOS actually into Whistle about a year and a half ago. We've been running it ever since. And for us, I would even say every year before that was controlled chaos. So we grew like a rocket ship. But
when EOS came in.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's just different. So if I look at the years at Whistle, so it was like a huge wave, year 1, up, down, year 2 also. So the general trajectory was up, but every year it was either we were signing tons of clients, bringing tons of revenue, or churning, and then signing and then churning. And it was crazy. I mean, the stress of that was insane. When we deployed EOS, it actually changed everything. So Yona read Traction he was on a holiday, I think I don't know which holiday he was on. He didn't have a book to read. And he came back with this bee in his bonnet where he's like, we have to deploy it. Now, him and I are very different, like in a few ways. One of the ways we're different is I am like fire, okay? I can have a bunch of things cooking at different things, and I can apply heat here, heat there, and I can, he is a laser beam. If it's outside the laser beam, it doesn't interest him.
Wow,
but
I like that.
If you're in the beam, there's nothing that can get in his way. And so when he came in and he's like, this is what we're doing, and I would like, whatever, I don't want to deal with all this EOS, and why are we doing this goal and that goal? Scorecards. I mean, literally, we had our EOS L10 meeting today, right? So
the best.
To me, naturally, these things are like, oh, who gives a shit, right? But
for organization,
I held my breath, I went along with it, and it's changed everything for us. And it really comes down to defining, what does everybody do? What are their roles? Building and measuring all of these items. And what we've just deployed this year across the company is a statement that everyone gets a number. So everyone has a number at Whistle. Everyone knows how they're measured. What does good look like? What does bad look like? And what is the result of that? And I think that's actually very empowering. I personally would have loved that at some of the places I've worked. where I at least would know if I'm doing a good job or a bad job, or objectively say, hey, I hit all my KPIs, I'm even above or whatever, let's talk. So this was the system that revolutionized everything. I think everything we tried before, it wasn't consistent and it wasn't in a formulaic way. So even though we would come up with systems and plans and scripts and whatever, it wasn't like across the board. Running EOS changed everything for us. And it's so funny you said it, because like, before we did it, I didn't know anyone who did it.
Everybody pops up with it. It's like, yeah, EOS.
Yeah, all these people I talk to, they're like, yeah, we've been running it for years. I'm like, oh, shit.
It's amazing. It's an amazing book. And he's written a second copy now called Rocket Fuel. So that's the second version of it. And then get this is going to screw your head up. So I was building some of the new plans, and it was talking about, I've typically run my entire business on EOS, but we're doing this with AI native and operating systems. And I don't know if you've seen some of the new the Y Combinator material, but have you heard of the new AI native company that's built on a centralized repository of information? So we've typically built our businesses now that we have done it on EOS, which is a structured framework that existed and was very, very helpful 10 years ago, to the truth, right? However, now with all of the systems of record and all the data that you have as a result of using EOS, what I've heard is you take all of that information, the matrix, the vision, data, processes, everything. You take all of that and all the data around it and you put it into, it would be great to hear what your brother would say. You put it into a central repository, which is this infinite scrolling document of all the data that ever existed around Whistle. And then your brother will be able to probably figure it out. You might have some element of it too. But then you strategically place AI agents around the repository. So now, just to your point, on your dashboard behind you, let's say you booked 1,802 meetings in 2026. I want to increase that by 10% this year. So the AI agents would go in and they'd read all of that data, and then they'd pop out, here's how you achieve a 10% increase in this. And then David or Yona would just say, I approve, and it would execute the actual workflow. That's insane capabilities of what they're doing. And a reason why I mentioned that is because I was really pissed off when I read that Claude told me that. I said, I just spent the past 6 years building all my companies on this, and now you're telling me it's outdated. So we'll get to that. But you said agencies should handpick their customers and refuse bad fits. I've lost tons of money from bad clients. At 300 clients, what does a bad fit actually look like? And how fast can you spot one today?
So a bad fit, I think you've got to be really, really clear on this definition, and you do need a definition, and you need to train your sales team to be able to say no in a nice way, but be able to say no and let go of that commission. So the first thing, I'll talk about this. One is the definition of bad fit for us and just in general. Two is, the sales, how to manage that internally. So we know that there's a few key factors. Okay, for our company, it's things like the TAM size. Can we find them, these prospects that they're paying us to reach out to? Have we worked in this, with this ICP before? Those are some of the factors. Do the deal metrics make sense? So do they have big enough deal sizes? Do the lead sources make sense? Is this only called outbound, or are there other things that we can work with? And then we'd also look at actually the client themselves. Like, are we going to be able to work with these people? So our customer success, head of customer success, actually built this calculator for us. She used like base 44, which is like Lovable, to build this exact thing, this metric. We actually have a calculator that the sales team fills out after the sales calls, and it spits out a score, and it tells you what kind of client they're going to be, what kind of product or service we should offer them. Okay, but what I also did was, I was once a salesperson, okay? And when it comes to commission, I have a few skills in life. One of the skills I have is knowing how to manipulate the commission structure. I'll give you an example, man. I used to work when I worked in the edtech company, they would give us, this is a crazy deal, by the way. Obviously, once they hired a CFO, they canceled this deal. We had 20% year one, and 10% residual on every other year. So I would sell the fattest year one contract I could. Setup fee, whatever. And then 5-year deal. 5-year deal, right, with a university, etc. Call them after year 3 and be like, let's add another 5. And I realized, like, I can just compound this. I don't even need to start another business, right? Until the CFO came, and then he's like, but I would milk that thing, man. I would throw in everything. Year 1, let's throw in integration. Let's throw in whatever.
Yeah.
So I looked at my sales team today, and I go, okay, if I want them to take good quality clients, I can't just say, whatever you bring in, you're going to get paid. Because then you're going to bring in as much as you can. So what we do internally is we say, if the client churns within the first 3 months, there's no commission.
That's a very good deal.
So there's unlimited commission. I also hated when I'd work in SaaS companies, they'd say, if you hit this number, you get X, and then the number would always increase, but the X would never increase. I hated that. That killed it for me. So
yeah.
It's linear. You eat what you kill, but the business has a lot of costs to bring in that client. We're paying your salary. We're paying to acquire the client. We're paying to maintain the client. I need at least 3 months that client to stay, and then you'll get your commission for all the 3 months, but if they churn within 3 months, it's 0 commission. And that changed it because the AEs would look and say, yeah, I can take on this bad client, but if they're going to churn anyway, what am I doing all this work for? I might as well let them go. Now, I also loop my AEs into upselling. I don't use CSM for upselling, so they also win in that regards, because I think sellers are sellers and farmers are farmers, right? Hunters are hunters, farmers are farmers, and my CSM team are really good at deploying strategy, ensuring our clients are successful. They're not good at chasing, for the deal, right? They're good at spotting it, then they'll bring in the AEs. So I think for me, that was a big one. 1 is having a very clear definition of who's a bad fit, but 2, incentivizing the team so that they're actually going to do the behaviors that you're looking for. Because you can create the best scoring system in the world, but if the team are incentivized against that, they are going to do what they are paid to do.
That's correct. I agree with you. So let's talk about the human in the loop element, which is something that your agency has been recommended time and time again. Every AI SDR tool on the market promises more meetings at a fraction of the cost. You've built 100 plus person human SDR agencies. And it'd be interesting to know, what do your reps do that AI still cannot touch?
Okay, so the most important one is the phone. Okay, phone for outbound. This is the most important one. 73% of the meetings that we set are through the phone. Okay, we do email, we do phone, we do LinkedIn. If you could legally make outbound cold calls with AI SDRs, I would have been the first AI SDR agency. So prior to Whistle, I worked at a company that was AI SDR company, pre-OpenAI. So we used to sign on clients, we take 6 months to train the models, and then we would deploy. It was email, inbound email conversions, and we would try to build LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is like impossible to work. But phone, so if I was dealing with inbound only, I would just do AI SDR. It makes a ton of sense. If you're like an insurance agency, a bank, I wish my bank had an AI SDR, so I could just talk to AI, get the problem solved, and not wait. Or the doctor, this would be great. Can I just book an appointment without this would be great. These are great use cases.
Yes.
But for outbound B2B, legally you're blocked. You can't do it. That's the number one killer. Having said all of that, structurally, there's still a gap. I think I've come to this terms with AI. AI will get you 80% of what you want immediately. It will then get you 90% of what you want after hours and hours of work. And it will never get you the 100% of what you want, ever. That's basically what I've decided. It's like, you can prompt. When I found it out, I started showing my kid, you can take your drawings and turn them into toys using Gemini. Whatever. And he'd be like, that's awesome. And then it would render something, and he'd be like, can we just change this thing? That's when I was like, yeah, listen, mate. Just just leave it as it is. I guess we're going to spend hours here trying to change the guy's bandana into red. So that's the situation with AI. How do we use it though? We are one of those businesses that has been so benefited by AI. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
One is, we use Orem as our dialer. the feedback out, it allowed us to, we used to have all these team leaders. We only have 2. We only need 2 for 100 and something SDRs. Why?
Yeah.
Because the SDRs get live training. When they end a call and they get an objection, they can hear 2 calls that someone else recently had where they had that objection and overcame it. That's pretty cool. We can create AI personas of prospects and have them practice on it. The list building with Clay and Ocean.io and all these other tools that have allowed us to build super accurate on ICP lists for clients. Game changer for us. Changed all the metrics. So these kinds of the content creation piece, which is minor because it pulls data points from the list, really. But these things have unlocked a lot of value for us and allowed our SDRs effectively to become phone specialists. The email we mostly automate and we just have them handle the replies. The LinkedIn will use like an automation tool that sends a LinkedIn request, connection request, and when we get a reply, they'll manually write to the prospect. But and then internally, we've got so many internal apps that we've built, and we run Claude scripts and all these kinds of things that help us understand our business. To the point that you brought up this AI, a structure thing. We just signed an NDA with this company now. The guy's a former Whistler. He's now gone on. He's like an AI nut. He wants to basically build. I think what you said. He's calling it we're calling it like an intranet, which is going to have all of our info that we can ask all these questions.
Yeah.
So he's going to build this out for us, and so internally, and for our clients, it's added a ton of value, but it's not going to replace the actual core product for us, which is the SDR making calls primarily. And I think the phone really is, out of the 3 channels that you've got for outbound, the phone is the final frontier ready, because LinkedIn is so limited, email is so limited, and the only way we're really getting through, we're getting through on all, but you can see the stats behind me, right? So 19% via email, 11% or so via LinkedIn, the rest via other, 73% is coming off the phone, give or take. So that's the numbers are the numbers, right? And
speaks for itself. Speaks exactly for itself. So another key point that makes Whistle a heavy competitor against the rest is you deploy your SDRs in 10 days. And I remember signing, so we had our first client was our worst client as well as our best client, and it was for 15 months we had them, and at month 11 they asked us to increase from 1 rep to 3. And for us, we were like, whoa, this is it, we're going to be rich, like $128,000 contract for 6 months. But what did we do? We didn't anticipate for hiring, interviewing, recruitment, onboarding, ramping up. So what do you think happened in month 3? They still had the same results as month 1, right, with 1 SDR. So you deploy your SDRs, though, in 10 days. Most companies take 6 months to hire and ramp 1 rep. We tried to do it with 3, but they canceled before. So what are you doing in those 10 days that other companies get wrong in the 6 months?
Pre the 10 days, we have a talent pool of vetted reps that we've already trained on best practices. We've already sussed them out. They're sitting there at any point in time. We have about 40 people that are available and ready to go. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, when we pair them with a client, we're pairing an SDR that's actually worked either selling to the ICP, number 1, right, or in that space. Mm-hmm. Number 2, knows the structure. So if it's an outbound client, you need an outbound SDR. If it's an inbound client, you need an inbound SDR. Number 3, they understand the company stage. If you're an earlier stage company, you need a different kind of SDR than if you're a later stage company. Those are the 3 things that we look at when we pair. Now, assuming we do all of that well, those 10 days are really very, very controlled and systemized. Why I like sales development and SDRs, being an SDR agency, one of the things I like about it is it's a systems thing, okay? It's very easy. We actually built a diagnostic tool, by the way. Maybe I'll share it for free with all the listeners.
Yes.
You can just plug in the notes. It will tell you exactly what's wrong, exactly what's wrong. So SDRs need to know a very specific amount of things. And that's what we focus on. When we onboard a client, we ask very specific questions. I don't need to know the coding language. I don't need to know your founder's life story. It's nice. You can tell it to us, but the prospect doesn't want to know it, and we don't want to know it. it, and you can tell it in the sales call. We don't need to know who you invested in by. Like, all these are classic mistakes, in sales. We're being invested by in. No one cares, mate. The prospect doesn't care.
Yes.
Top line YC, they don't care that YC and A60. Who cares? They care about the problem you solve. So what do we focus on? The problem you solve. Who else is doing it? What's the persona like that I'm going to be reaching out to? What do they care about? Okay, why would they switch? And then basic things like, what kind of things should I find out in the conversation that will be helpful to the sales team? 1 or 2 qualification questions max. Hey, by the way, Shane, now that we're talking, how do you deal with this problem currently? Do you use someone else? What do you do? Is this something that you would consider in the next 6, 12 months? Whatever the qualification questions are. We'll really focus them on, for each client, those key things. And then as time goes on, the learning curve will kick in. So we'll have them do things like, share with us your sales call recordings. Those are gold. We do check in with the client every week as well, and do like live sessions. But most of our strategy, most of our effort goes into how to handle a conversation on the phone, and from there everything will flow. So I think for us to deploy, and I think for anyone, if you want to deploy SDRs really well, one, you got to choose really good people. That's the hardest part, right? And that's actually our secret sauce. 2, though, once you've chosen those people, you really have to onboard them in a very focused, systemized way that ignores the BS and just focuses them on like the key things they need to know to execute. They don't need to know everything that goes on. But as time goes on, loop them in. We've got a new product update, we've signed a new client, we've whatever, because that's going to be helpful later. Send them some sales call recordings. They don't need a ton of info to go by in the beginning. They need enough to know, hey, this person I'm speaking to sounds legitimately interested in learning more. Let me book him. Or legitimately not interested, let me let him go. Or whatever, right? But I think that's a key part here. I think a lot of companies overdo it with the ramp up and the onboarding.
All the nonsense that is really irrelevant. So last phase of the podcast, you've been pushing this idea of a product-led sales assist role. And that's very different from the traditional SDR. I'm really curious to know about this. For a VP of sales with a PLG product and an SDR team right now, what should they be changing this quarter?
So it's funny how like everything's fashionable, and then it comes in, goes out. Like, I think ironically, I called this year, I said to Jonna, where are we going to find most leads this year? From face-to-face events, conferences, steak dinners, and coffees, right? This is it. This is where. Why? Because it's like the thing that everyone's not doing again, So I think it's the same. Like a lot of every PLG company in the world now is doing the same thing. They're trying to remove humans from the loop, and they're hoping for customer loyalty, and they're hoping for self-serve. But self-serve will work for a really small value client, but for like a big value client, you're just not going to see it. And they do appreciate it. We had a client where this idea first came. We had a PLG client that brought us in and said, hey, we just need like to understand why people are signing up and how to upsell them and what we can do. And we used to offer them like a 10-minute consultation Zoom call. That's how we started with this thing. And so like for select prospects coming through, so if you're coming through from a big company or whatever, you have this option, like talk to an expert. It was a 10-minute call. Hey, what are you doing? What's your use case? Whatever. And we would use that to show them all these key features. And what they found was the retention was much higher. The chances of the prospects signing up to a bigger package was higher. And also we would map out all these other relationships that they didn't see. So, I don't know, Microsoft Office in Seattle signed up to your product. And by talking to them, you ask them, hey, what about all the other Microsoft offices around the world? And suddenly you've got an enterprise multi-million-dollar contract. You're not going to do that with your self-serve, low-touch BS structure. I think there's an obsession today with like these like solopreneur, I don't need anybody. I'm just.
It don't work.
Money, man. Everyone wants free money. I get it. We all want to not have to work and deal with people and problems and just make money. It's not real. It's not real. And I think specifically for PLG now, because the tech is so commoditized. I saw one of our new leads that came through yesterday on his website. He's got a section called Versus Claude. It's the first time I've seen this. And I said,
that's very cool.
I said to him, that is mind-blowing for me. It's the first time I've seen it. Why? Because everyone says, I can probably just build this in Claude, right?
Yeah.
And so let's imagine the tech is being commoditized. So the human relationship, specifically if you're B2B, business technology or something to do with that, even if you're PLG, that goes very, very, very far. And if you look at the top brands, even B2C brands, tech brands that have a strong buy-in from customers, it's because there's that personal touch, that feeling that like, I'm someone. That's even if you move it all the way to B2C, even physical products, like why do people pay more for Ferrari or Aston Martin, right? Or Abercrombie and Fitch in the US, why was that a thing? Because it was like
Wow.
this club that I'm part
Yes.
of. I want to be in a club. I don't want to just go in and buy a car. You know, I
Yeah.
guarantee you, if Ferrari said, the only way you can buy our cars now is all online. There's no dealerships. You never meet the person. No one pours you champagne. Buy our cars online. It's going to be so easy. I reckon they'll lose all their market share because it's the human touch. And I think that is a secret sauce that a lot of tech companies, PLG companies, if they move now, ironically, because everything's swinging AI and automation,
Yeah.
if you if you differentiate yourself for key clients, for key
Yeah.
needs, you're going to see a huge lift.
I agree. So, last two questions. You wrote that startups should stop building rocket ships and start building castles. You've had 3 exits, David. Is Whistle the castle?
I think so. You know, I once had a conversation with Jon a couple of years ago, and he said to me, "What's the plan post?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about. This is the plan. Like, what do you mean? This is the plan. There is no plan B. This is it, man." So, I think for me, this is really where I found my calling, and I've got a lot of value out of it. We've delivered a lot of value out of it. It's something, you know, before I started Whistle, I actually sat down. I have a ton of ideas all the time. I actually sat down. I wish I had it with me. I wrote down 10 things that any business idea that I come up with has to have. Okay? I can't remember it off by heart, but one of the things I wrote down was it needs to provide measurable value. And for me, one of the coolest things about what we do is I can actually measure the value that we deliver to our clients. And not just that, but every once in a while, like, I know this is going to sound cheesy, but my favorite day of the month is payday. Not just because I get paid, but because when I pay people, I'm like, that's 140 families that this idea and this taking the risk and taking the jump is feeding this month.
Yeah.
That's a freaking cool feeling. This is not a charity, and I'm not a holy man type of thing, but that's pretty cool. And so, yes, it's the castle. I think it's the castle for a lot of people. It's changed a lot of people's lives. I've had people on my team send me photos of houses that they managed to buy and cars that they've managed to buy, kids they've managed to feed and put through school, and not to mention all these founders that we've helped grow their business who've exited or raised tons of money, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool to be a part of that whole experience. And so, yeah, this is the castle. I don't know if I'm the king or the court jester. But sometimes both. Depends which day, you know.
All right, last question, David. A revenue leader is listening right now. They're about to hire their first outsourced SDR team. What is the one thing they need to get right before they sign that contract?
Your ICP.
Whew.
Your ICP, man. Don't do it. If you're not sure if you're selling to doctors or schools or librarians or SaaS companies, don't do it yet. Spend the time breaking your teeth on your own to find your ICP. Because a good SDR agency is going to be, they might tell you, oh yeah, we're going to do all this market analysis and research and help you find your ICP. But 2 things are going to happen. A good SDR agency is going to be really good at getting you meetings with who you tell them to get meetings with. That's number 1. Number 2 is, even if you think that you're going to use them to define your ICP, you are not going to have the patience to sit there and pay the bills every month while they find all the no's, because to find the yes, you have to find all the no's.
Yeah.
So they're going to find 99 no's to find that one yes, and that might take 6 months. So are you going to do that? Pay that 6 month every month, 0 revenue coming in because they're finding your ICP? I think that's the number 1 thing, is like define your ICP, go to them and say, guys, we've got 10 clients that are all looking like this. Find me my next 10, 20, 30. If you do that, it's going to be a resounding success. If you don't do that, you are going to feel like you threw your money in the bin. They're going to feel really burnt out. It's really hard for them too, just having been on the other side of that equation.
Yeah.
It's very demotivating for everyone involved, the SDR, etc. That's the number one thing, man. Define your ICP before you hire anyone external and even internal. You know, try crack that yourself as a founder, and then outsource somebody or hire somebody to do it for you.
And if they want to hire the best agency, what do they do? Where do they come to find you? How can they inquire?
So look up Whistle Ltd. Just head straight right over there. You can find me on LinkedIn as well if you want to chat. I think I'm, the only David Zeff at least in SDR world. Don't look up whistle.com because whistle.com is like a wearable for dogs. It's like probably a very successful business too. But whistle.ltd, and if you're looking either for us to do managed services, so end-to-end SDR department for you, or if you're just looking for the talent, you know what to do, but you just need great SDRs, you can also offshore our talent through us, and we work in every time zone and sell to any country worth selling to in all the major languages. So that's where you should head. Well, that's it. I think that's a great way to wrap up the show. David, thank you so much. That is the end of the hour. Any last words? No, that's it, everybody. Go have fun. Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this episode and staying here the whole way through. If you like what you saw, click subscribe. It'll take you 2 seconds. It helps me reach amazing guests and deliver valuable content for you. And if you ever want to find out what we do as a business, go to www.gorevintel.com, and that is the place where we help you make decisions that are backed by intelligence, and it's for founder CEOs. That's it for me for now. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.